Good morning and welcome to the first day of the St. Peter's Way. Now just behind me is the medieval market town of Chipping Ongar, and it's overlooked by these enormous castle earthworks that sadly you can't actually go and explore, but you can just see as the path skirts around the moat. What you can see in the centre of the town is the Church of St. Martin, and it's Grade 1 listed and dates right back to 1080, and it shows signs of Norman work. And looking at the actual material, it almost looks like it's made of Roman tile, but I haven't actually done my research, so I'm not 100% sure. Now the trail is 45 miles long, and it's going to take me in a pretty much straight line right across Essex to end on the coast at St. Peter's Chapel, which sits right on the site of a Roman fort. So this part of the St. Peter's Way is going to be about 10 miles. I started down in Chipping Ongar, which you can actually see just on the top of the hill over there. This is High Ongar down here. In fact, I can actually see the little parish church over there. And I say it's going to take me about 10 miles. And I've actually parked at a small village called Margaretting, which is just south of Chelmsford. And I managed to get a bus from there very early this morning into Chelmsford, and then another bus to Chipping Ongar. So my plan is not to walk this trail in 4 consecutive days. I'm going to be doing it in 4 days over the spring period. So it's currently right at the beginning of April, and it's going to be about 10 or 12 degrees today. And it's meant to be just blue sky all day, which is going to be fantastic. Feels like a proper spring morning, and I can hear so many birds singing. I can hear woodpeckers in the trees. It's absolutely lovely. And as some of you may know, I have walked in this area before. In fact, the Essex Way that I walked a couple of years ago goes through Chipping Ongar and actually heads over towards Willingale, which is a small village just over that way somewhere. I was hoping I might be able to see the church spire, but I can't. But it's actually one of the reasons why I've kind of put this trail off. I've wanted to do it since I walked the Essex Way, since I kind of read about it, but I didn't really want to walk in the same area too frequently. So I've given it a couple of years, and now I've come back to actually do the trail, and everything from now on is all going to be new, which is really nice. So I'm now coming up to the tiny hamlet of Paslow Wood Common. I'm going to head straight through and along the field paths on the other side. And that's going to take me to the village of Blackmore and its rather intriguing church. This wonderful building is the Church of St. Lawrence, and it actually dates all the way back to the mid-12th century, where it was founded as an Augustinian priory. Now, not much remains of the first buildings that were actually here on the site, but if you go inside, there is an archway which marked the original entrance to the priory. And this wonderful wooden tower dates to 1400. Blackmore was such a beautiful little village. I actually sat by the village pond, had a few snacks, but there was wildlife around and the sound of running water, absolutely gorgeous. And I spotted the village pub, and there's some tea rooms next door and also a shop, so perfectly situated to actually have some lunch right in the middle of the day. So I'm literally 10 minutes out of Blackmore, and look over there, just next to this woodland, there is a massive herd of deer, and I reckon there must be probably 50 to 80 deer there. It's so unusual for them to be just out in the open, broad daylight, but clearly enjoying whatever crop has been sown in this field. I'm about 2 miles or so out of Blackmore, and I've just joined this lovely track called Maple Tree Lane, and this is going to lead me all the way to the tiny hamlet of Mill Green. So I've just left a lovely area of woodland behind to enter this large open field, and it doesn't seem like much at the moment other than the fantastic view that way. But this was actually the site of a Roman villa, and with its location, obviously with that view and a water source in this woodland, of course someone's going to build a nice big country house here. Archaeologists have managed to find pieces of pottery here that actually date this villa back to the reign of Emperor Hadrian, which is the beginning of the 2nd century. So I've only got about a mile and a half left of today, but this last few 100 meters has actually been dominated by this sound that's getting louder and louder, and that is of course the A12. And in fact, here is my first view. I can see Lorry zooming up and down over there, which is just near Ingatestone, and Margaretting is just over that way. So I'm on the edge of Margaretting now. In fact, I passed the village pub just back there, which is right on the very southern edge of the village. And now I'm just gonna pass through these fields and then take a little footpath into the main village. And there I have parked, but what you can do is get a bus into Chelmsford, stay overnight, and then return the following morning, and then continue on with part 2. Now, if you like this video, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell to keep up to date with any future uploads, and I will see you in part 2. Good morning and welcome to part 2 of the St. Peter's Way. Now, just behind me on the other side of these livestock fields is the village of Margaretting, and that is where I've started today. Now, this section is going to be about 11 miles. It's going to take me through the village of Stock, over the busy A130, and then ending in the village of Beghaus. So I'm almost at the village of Stock now, and I've stopped here because I'm actually about 94 metres above sea level, and I've got a wonderful view looking down this little valley here. That's over to Gallywood Church. I can see the spire just above the woodlands, and then if I head left, I think I can just catch the very edge of Chelmsford. So I'm now in the village of Stock, and actually the trail bypasses the main kind of core of the village. There are several pubs, the trail does pass one, but there are a couple more, and there is a village shop as well. This lovely mill here is Stock Mill, and it is Grade 2 star listed, and a fine example of a tower mill with a boat-shaped cap. Now this one was converted to steam power in the 20th century, but likely dates back to either the late 18th or early 19th century. I'm just skirting around the northern edge of Hanningfield Reservoir, and it is literally just over this hill here. Hopefully I will get a view as I just go around the corner, but the reservoir is absolutely enormous. So it holds 25 billion litres of water and has a surface area of about 860 acres. Now, to give that a different perspective, that's 900 million cubic feet of water, and it's owned by Essex and Suffolk Water, but actually part of it is under the management of Essex Wildlife Trust, because since the construction of the reservoir, it's actually become an internationally important place for waterfowl. And in fact, I think just over here you can see some of the reed beds, and I went to one of the viewpoints that actually looks over part of that reed bed just a few minutes ago. I'm about a kilometre or so away, so maybe 10 or 15 minutes from crossing the A130. In fact, I can actually see some traffic passing behind the trees over there. So actually cross the A130 just the other side of the farm, and then it's about 2 kilometres or so to East Hanningfield. And I'm actually going to stop there for some lunch because I haven't stopped today. I'm starting to get a bit hungry, so I reckon I'll be there in about 45 minutes. But then that's actually the second to last village of the day, because about 2 kilometres beyond that, I'll reach Bicknaker, which is actually the end of this part of the walk. This lovely church here is the Church of All Saints in East Hanningfield, and it actually dates to sort of the mid-1880s. The church was actually placed here from previous site up at East Hanningfield Hall, because that church actually burnt down and was sadly demolished in sort of 1960 when it was declared unsafe. But there was a record that there was a church there in the 7th century, which is really impressive. It's actually here at East Hanningfield that I joined another long distance trail called the Saffron Trail, and it was actually devised to kind of mirror the Essex Way. Now the Essex Way starts down in the southwest and heads northeast, whereas the Saffron Trail starts in the southeast and heads northwest, and it's about 18 miles in length, finishing at Saffron Walden. So I'm almost in Bicknaker now, and I'm on a little bit of a hilltop here. In fact, you can just make out the ground falls away slightly there, and then it actually goes up the other side of the valley up to a height of about 107 metres. I'm at about 60 metres here, and on the other side of the valley I can make out a church tower, and that's in Danbury. Danbury is just a small village, but it has a very interesting historic monument there, and that is an Iron Age hill fort. And the church actually sits right in the centre of the hill fort, and there are very few earthworks that actually remain. There's an information board over there that does say that the earthworks are in very poor condition and probably date to about the 5th or 6th century BC. Good morning and welcome back to the St Peter's Way, and today I am on part 3 of this wonderful trail, and that's going to be a roughly 10-mile long stretch that leaves the village of Beghaus just behind those trees behind me, passes through the village of Purley and then ends at Bradwell-on-Sea. And as the name would suggest, by the end of this day I'm going to be very close to the coast. So I'm just passing beside Wyckham's Hall, and what looks like just an ordinary stream down here isn't. It's actually an ancient moat. Now this site here is actually unoccupied. You can see a big platform, there's no buildings on there or anything. But what it does mean is that probably back in the medieval times there would have been a big hall here, likely Wyckham's Hall, simply because the farm has been named after the hall that's been demolished probably long ago. And oh, I've just come across another very large section of the moat. This is actually the southeast corner, and you can see it's still rather wet. Now these tended to be built actually as a status symbol, just kind of announcing how much money you've got, rather than a defensive purpose like they would around a castle. But really nice to see. So I've just entered this sort of open common area here. There's a network of paths all over this large field, and it actually marks my descent down into the village of Purley. And if needed, you can actually top up on supplies there. There is a small community shop and, of course, the village pub. So heading through Purley means that you have to pass through this large vineyard, and it actually heads uphill to a rather good viewpoint. I think all of this settlement over there is all Malden, and that descends just down to the estuary. And I think this is the first time I've actually seen the estuary on this walk. And it also means that I'm really starting to head out now on this large peninsula that makes up southeast Essex. I'm also heading towards the village church now, which is Grade 1 listed and dedicated to All Saints. And this church mainly dates to the 14th century. Now it's very easy just to leave Purley and keep marching along the trail, glimpsing up at this lovely view on my left, but it's actually quite important to look around you because there is an earthwork here, right at the end of this long ridge, with the church at one side, and this, the site of Purley Castle, at the other. Now this is a large motte, which was about 80 metres in diameter, I believe, and there is no record that a stone castle was ever built here, but there is record of a timber one, and the entrance being on the western side, which is just over where the white building is there. That's Purley Hall. The castle would have given an amazing view over the entire peninsula, meaning it could be easily defended, and of course this is protected as a scheduled ancient monument. Now this castle has never officially been dated, but they're usually built around the 12th century, so shortly after the Norman conquest. So this church here is the Church of St Mary in Munden, and it's Grade 1 listed and is actually redundant. Now sadly that means it's not in use anymore, but it is in the care of a charity which looks after redundant churches, so it preserves them for future generations. What's quite amazing about this site is that it's also moated as well, although the church is not, I don't think, directly inside the moat. If I turn you around this way, there is a large platform here, and there's a moat that runs along the tree line all the way around this field. And just across the way is Munden Hall, and it's actually quite a modern building. But this implies that there was once an enormous medieval manor house here called Munden Hall, I would assume. And the likelihood is that the owners of that would have built this church to guarantee their entry into heaven, but also to allow the local villagers to use that. So I'm just at the other end of the medieval moat now, and it is still filled with water all along this side here. So this is all original. Now that marks the very eastern edge, and it would have gone along the tree line over there, up towards the church, and then over towards Munden Hall, which is the white building on that side. That is a very large moat, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was a dividing line between two sort of islands here. That's quite common, and the manor would have been either on this platform or on this one, or it could have been an enormous manor house and actually covered the whole area. Now sadly I can't find any information on it online, so that is all speculation. Just as you leave the area of the moat, you come across these enormous dead oaks, and there's about a dozen in this field. And from watching a previous video, I think these are linked to some kind of witchcraft tale, but I couldn't tell you any more information on that. Now just across the field over there is the village of Bradwell-on-Sea, and in fact I can see loads of the boat masts, so I know the estuary is just there. Now this footpath is just taking me around the edge of the field to actually join the estuary path, so it's going to be really nice, and I'll be keeping my eye out for wildlife along the mudflats. That's if the tide is out. But I'm going to be ending in the village centre, where it's possible to grab public transport back into Malden for an overnight stay. So I'm almost at the village of Bradwell-on-Sea, and I'm now up on the seawall, and thankfully the tide is out, although there's not many birds here. I've just spotted some red shank over here, and I can hear some red shank, and there was a grey heron that flew just over the top a moment ago. It's absolutely amazing here. This sort of habitat is so wildlife rich. It is perfect for waders, and the Essex coast has most, I think, of the UK's salt marsh. Good morning and welcome back to the St. Peter's Way, and I'm on the final day of this wonderful trail, day number 4, which is about 11 miles long. I've just left the village of Bradwell-on-Sea behind me, and I've got the village of Steeple and Tillingham to explore as I progress further east along the Dengie Peninsula, and then eventually I will reach the England coast path, where I'm going to turn left and head north up to the Chapel of St. Peter on the Wall, which is the official end of this trail. This short section along this part of the estuary is absolutely glorious. I can hear Chetty's warblers singing just over there, and I'm pretty sure there's some shelduck down here, and the tide is right out, so I suppose when it's in, all this is going to be covered in water, probably right up to the path almost. But the view is absolutely stunning over all of these mudflats, and just hear another bird singing. I'm not sure what that was, but I can see to the other side of the Blackwater estuary over there, and if I come round I can just make out the very top of the spire at the church and steeple. So that's my next sort of point of interest. But this is just stunning. This lovely Grade 2 listed building here is the Church of St. Lawrence in the village of Steeple, and it was actually built in just 1884, but it was done so using old bricks and old material that was actually on the site from an older church, and some of these archways and other features actually date back to the 12th century, so it just shows that this village has been here for a long time. So from Steeple to here, there's about a mile or so of road walking, and most of it doesn't have a pavement. Thankfully there is a bit of a verge, but there are sections where you're just in the road and there's nowhere to jump out of the way if traffic's coming, so it's a little bit dangerous, so take care. But I'm now off the road, thankfully, and I know I've only got a tiny bit of road walking left for the entire day. I'm actually coming up a little bit of a hill now, and I can see a little wind turbine and a water tower, and that's about 2 kilometers ahead, and that is sort of the halfway point between here, or the road, and Tillingham. So roughly 4 kilometers from here to Tillingham, and then from there it's across the marshes all the way to the sea. This lovely church here is the Church of St Nicholas in Tillingham, and it's a Grade 1 listed building that dates all the way back to the 12th century. The chancel and the aisles and the tower are all later additions, and it looks like they're doing some well-needed restoration works. I'm not going to lie, that was quite arduous getting through those fields. Some parts of it are not very well waymarked, and then through those meadows there wasn't even a path cut through or anything like that, so it was knee-high grass the whole way. But I'm getting very close to the coast now, and if I look across this field right over there, I can actually see St Peter's Chapel, which is the end of this walk, and I'd say it's probably about another 2 or 3 kilometers, but in a moment I'm just going to head up onto the seawall and then head north. So here I am now, right on the seawall, and out there is the North Sea, and I can see right across actually to what I think is like Clacton and that kind of area in Essex, and then that would lead further round to the Suffolk coast, and it looks very choppy out there. There is a strong wind coming off the sea and it's pretty chilly. Now, looking at the map, the right of way actually does go along the very top of the sea wall, but as you can see, the path is not very well trodden. So I'm going to stick down on this lower path for now, out of the wind. But then just ahead, I'm going to turn right and head right across, I think almost up to the waves over there. And then I can see St Peter's Chapel right over in the distance. Here it is, St. Peter's Chapel on the wall. And I've officially completed my St. Peter's Way adventure. But there's a lot of history on this site. If I turn you this way to start with, can you see there is this slight bank here? This is actually the western edge of a Roman fort called Othona. And Othona was part of a series of Roman forts along the coast of East Anglia. They were called Saxon shore forts, likely to try and repel any invaders from the Danish. Now, this Roman fort was actually built in the mid-3rd century AD, and it was originally a rectangular plan. Now, unfortunately, the sea has washed away most of the eastern side, including the eastern wall, but the plan can still be seen visible as an earthwork. You can see the northern and the western side. Now, after the Romans abandoned the site, a Saxon monastery was actually founded here, and as we all know, the Saxons very rarely built in stone, and choosing this site, that actually meant they had plenty of resources to actually construct buildings out of stone. And that's where this wonderful chapel of St. Peter comes in. Now, this chapel is a Grade 1 listed building, and it dates to the 7th century. More specifically, we believe 654 AD. And over the centuries, it's been used as multiple different buildings, including a barn. And you can see, I believe here, this would have been one of the entrances to the barn, where they've actually converted the building. And all of the material you can see here is all reused from that Roman fort. You can see Roman tiles right up at the top, and then there's sections of Roman tile as well that you can see in amongst the fabric, and then some much larger stones on these corners. An absolutely wonderful building, and I can't wait to have a little look inside. Going inside the chapel was absolutely lovely. There was a real sense of peace inside, and the sound of the wind and the waves was all gone. It was just dead silence. Now, another really interesting fact about this chapel is that it's actually built directly over the western wall of the Roman fort. As it comes along here, it actually goes further into that field, and this is actually where the western gate would have been for the fort. Now, you can see some marked out areas on the floor here in concrete. This marks out parts of the building that have sadly been lost through the years. Now, on this eastern end, there used to be an apse, and that's what this curving feature is here. And there are some small sections that jut out at the side at either end as well. And I do believe this used to have a tower as well at one point. Now, I have wanted to visit this chapel for a very long time, and it would have been really easy for me to park up down the road and walk down and have a look. But to do it in this method, walking 45 miles across the county of Essex as a pilgrimage to this site, really does add a new dimension to this site. Now, I'm not religious, but going inside this chapel really felt like that I was entering a sanctuary, and I felt protected from the wind and the sound of the crashing waves. And there really was just peace, quiet, and serenity.